Hey everyone, it's me Tammy. Welcome back to my world. I am really excited to be sharing this video with you. I did film it a little while ago, but it is still relevant now. It is an interview with a filmmaker friend of mine who I met in grad school. Her name is Sara, and this is her telling me about how she made her film. You can actually watch her film on Amazon. I'll leave the link down below. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the video. Thanks. I am so excited today because I am going to be interviewing a friend from my grad school, Sara Barger, and we're talking about her film. And I'm just gonna go ahead and let you just tell me a little bit about you and your film, and kind of we'll start from there. We'll start from there.
Well, thanks for having me, Tammy. So my film is called Little But Fierce. It's a documentary. It's a short. It's 30 minutes long, and it's about this family that I had the pleasure to get to know in Hampton, Virginia. They have a daughter named Madison, and the mom is named Melanie. And Madison, when she was 4, was diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. And so, it's just heartbreaking on its own. And her mom, Melanie, is an ER nurse. So in addition to all the clinical trials and 4 rounds of chemo and like the litany of drugs that she was on, they also decided to put her on medical cannabis, which in places like California or Washington, that wouldn't be that big of a deal, but they lived in Virginia at that time. They still live in Virginia, and it's illegal there. So in order to get the drugs that were helping with her pain, were helping with her seizures, and that they were hoping would help cure the cancer, they had to pay a stranger in California that they had never met, using like Bitcoin and Venmo to send drugs across state lines, so that just to treat, and it was mostly for pain management. When she wasn't on those drugs, she wasn't on her cannabis, she was in excruciating pain to the point they put her on methadone and oxycodone. A 9-year-old, they're putting on oxycodone and methadone to deal with her pain, but it's illegal for her to take medical cannabis.
That is absolutely outrageous. I deal with chronic pain myself, and so I've been kind of looking into things, trying to find stuff. And the first time I was without pain in a long time was when I had some marijuana. So I totally understand that. And so since it's in the news right now, how does the fact that the House voted to legalize marijuana, how do you think that would have affected them at the time? And, what do you think that means going forward for people?
Well, so the thing that I didn't realize before I made the film was that even in states where medical cannabis is legal, it's still not covered by health insurance. So because the federal government, the FDA, still claims that there's no medicinal benefits for cannabis, which is just insane, because we all know that there is. And most Americans, if polled, agree that medical cannabis should be legal in our country, at least, if not recreationally. So really, until the president signs a bill that says, yes, cannabis is not, and it's not even that it's legal, the FDA still has to say there's medicinal purposes, or else health insurance won't cover it.
Which sucks.
They
My
were
daughter.
Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say my daughter-in-law also has epilepsy,
Mm.
and she takes a litany of drugs, but when she takes cannabis, they go away. So
Yeah.
bureaucracy
Yeah.
sucks.
Right.
Anyway,
They were spending like 25 at the end. By the time I finished filming with them, they were up to spending like $2,500 a month just on her cannabis, because she was on such high doses. And that's another thing, is that in states where it's recreationally legal, people who need medical grade, super high strength cannabis can't buy it anywhere, because you can't go to your CVS and buy it. And there's no incentives for dispensaries to carry 200 milligram doses of THC. She was on, so like, to put it in perspective, I get high off of 5 to 10 milligrams. This little girl was on 200 milligrams a night of THC, CBD, THCA, and what's called commonly known as Rick Simpson oil. It's full extract cannabis oil. So like, most places don't sell the dosage that she needs, right? Like, most people don't need to be on 500 milligrams of oxycodone, right? But she had multiple brain tumors in her brain and on her spine. She was and if you looked at this little girl, she didn't look high. She just was functioning. That's what she needed to function in the world. And yet our country says that that is illegal. And people are still arrested every day who have cancer and have a ton of medical marijuana. And then the court is like, well, why did you need this much? You must have been selling. But how they're not medical professionals, yet our courts are deciding what doctors should be deciding in our country.
Yeah. When I went and had a discussion with my medical provider, she could not talk to me about cannabis because it was considered illegal. So,
Yeah.
craziness. This is insane. Anyway, so we kind of got off on that tangent of medical marijuana, which is just the state of Utah agreed to have medical marijuana legalized, and then the government said, no, we can't do that. Even though the state, with overwhelming support, wanted it to be legalized, still can't. It just aggravates me to no end.
Yeah.
But anyway, so tell me, how did you meet this family? They were so sweet. They looked, like listening to the mom. So speaking as a mom who has had kids with chronic illnesses, nothing nearly like that. But it is heartbreaking, and you want to, as a parent, you want to do everything in your power, and kind of tell me how you met them and what it was like filming with them and the mom, and just tell me your experience with that.
Yeah. So the film's not just about medical marijuana. It's really about this story of this family who's just trying to do everything to save their little girl's life. So I met Madison and Melanie. I was teaching down in Norfolk, Virginia, which is right next to Hampton, at Old Dominion University at the time. And a friend of a friend was a regional advocate for the local chapter of NORML, which is the National Organization for Marijuana Legislation and Reform. And he had posted a picture of, he'd been doing kind of a Humans of New York type series where he posted a picture of someone who used medical cannabis and then did a little blurb about their story. And he posted a picture of Melanie and Madison. And I saw it on Facebook, and I reached out to him, and I didn't even ask about them specifically. I just said, hey, Jesse, do you have any stories for me? And he's like, oh yeah, you have to meet this mom and this little girl. They're amazing. So I reached out to them, and the first time I went over and met them, I didn't bring my camera. I just went over for dinner. And after meeting them, I was like, oh yeah, I need to tell their story. But this was the longest I'd ever filmed with a subject. So I'm used to doing much shorter projects where I go and I shoot for, a couple of weeks at a time at most, and then do like a quick 5-minute piece. So I was not planning to shoot with this family for 1.5 years when I went into it. So that was a learning experience for me. It was definitely a learning experience for them, but they are just they're like your typical American family, right? There's a mom and a dad, a brother and a daughter. They live in the suburbs, they have a minivan, and everything from the outside appears, to be this normal American family.
Wow. That's just incredible. One of the things that I was watching and was thinking about is the fact that they were just so comfortable with you. They just kind of, having a camera on all the time, you get either you ham it up or you get uncomfortable about it. And so it does take time to get comfortable with it. And I kept thinking, oh, they just look so comfortable. They don't even think about the camera being there. Just as your process, what did you do to help them become comfortable with you and sharing the story? Because sometimes, as filmmakers, and especially doc filmmakers, I'm not necessarily a doc filmmaker, but we are the lens that we are telling the story through. Mm-hmm. And so how do we, and you in particular, how do you approach that incredibly difficult task of connecting with people that are dealing with such incredible trauma, and get them to be comfortable talking to you and sharing those intimate details of their lives.
Mm.
What was your process with that?
Well, I think just first meeting them without a camera set the tone. And then I shoot with a very small camera. So I have a Sony PXW X70. It's like, or like this big, and it's very light. And I do everything myself. I don't have a crew. So it's just really me and my camera. And I just put a shotgun on the camera, and I have a one wireless lav that I mostly had on Melanie. And it's just really treating them like people. I wasn't like, oh, here's my subject and I'm the filmmaker. I'm like, oh, here are my friends. These are my friends. And granted, I didn't know them before I started making the film, but there were times where I would just like play Jenga or Uno with Madison without the camera on. And we would just hang out. And then, you know, we'd be chit-chatting. And then like there's a moment where she tells me about when she saw the angel. So I had like heard about that before from Melanie. And then when we went, I was like hanging out. Melanie was at work one night, and I went with Ben and Madison to ballet practice. And then afterwards, when we got back, we were just hanging out. He was making dinner while I was like playing games with Madison. And we were just playing a game. And then halfway through that game, I was like, I had the camera next to me, and I was like, oh, Madison, why don't you tell me about that angel you saw? And so it wasn't, and then she was like, oh yeah, let me tell you about this thing that happened. And she loved being on camera. So it was never like I was pushing her to be on camera and talk. Like she was like, she liked being on stage. She liked having the camera around. So that wasn't that hard. There were moments where I was like, all right, we're not going to film this right now because she's having a bad day, or she like, there was, you know, something happening, you know, like you, like with families, right? You know, you get in a fight with your mom about something. But yeah, I think it was just because I didn't go into it as like, I'm the filmmaker and you're my subjects. It's more, oh, let's all tell this story together. And I think that makes a big difference.
Well, it definitely came across for me, as the viewer watching this, that you cared about your subjects. And I think sometimes, you know, people want to, you know, they have an ulterior motive. And I think yours was just, you know, it came across to me, your motivation was just love and telling the story. And I, as, you know, like I said, as a mom, as a filmmaker, I could appreciate that. So, now I don't want to spoil the end, because it's definitely worth a watch. What, when you started this, how had you kind of like, did you have an end in mind, or did you just be like, I'll just film as long as I can, kind of like going in, this is a, you know, life is an unknown. So what were you thinking when you started, and then as your journey progressed, what, you know, did your goals change? Kind of talk about that.
Yeah. So I think I went into it, we all went into it very optimistic that cannabis is going to cure her cancer. And like, we're going to make this great film about how cannabis is curing cancer. And that didn't happen. But, and the whole time I'm like, I would talk with my best friend who's also a filmmaker. And I'm like, I'm not making a film about a little girl dying of cancer. She's like, I think that's what you're doing. I'm like, I'm not doing that. So I was very adamant that that wasn't the story, right? I wasn't doing this sensational film about a little girl dying, because that's sad and no one wants to make that film. I mean, I guess some people do, but that's not the kind of film I was trying to make. So really it was telling the story about this struggle that this family has to go to, that no one should have to go through. It's literally the worst thing in the world, right? And I know for a fact that if I had children, I would not have been able to make this film. Like, it's too much.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I think I was positioned in the right place in my life to be meeting them, to tell their story. But yeah, I think it's just, I wanted to show that, look at this normal looking family, that from the outside, everything appears normal. But when you actually get into the inner workings of any family, there's no such thing as perfect. There's no such thing as normal. But we all like to think that everyone else's lives are like these picture perfect because that's what we put on social media, or that's what you hear,
Exactly.
right? No one's talking about the hard times. So yeah, and I think I also, okay, so one of the other things that I really learned from making this film, I did for a while think, I was always very cognizant. I was like, if you ever want to stop filming, if this is ever too much and you're done making this film, please let me know. And they're like, understood. You're fine. You are welcome here at any time. But what I learned through the process of this film, I went into at first being like, oh, I'm this filmmaker and they're telling me this story and like it's a one-way street. But everyone has a story to tell and everyone wants to be heard. And that's really what I learned from this process, is that like if you sit down and listen, everyone has something interesting to say, and wants people to hear their story.
People want to be seen, you know, even people that are like shy, they want to be seen and valued as individuals and people. And I think that you did a really good job capturing that. Like I said, as a mom watching this, it was rough. It was devastating in moments. So I totally, you know, but I don't think you, like, from my opinion, I don't think you sugarcoated it, but I don't think you made it anything more than it was, just a journey.
Mm-hmm.
And that feels like it was like a conscious decision. How did you kind of go about when you were, you know, like you have a 30-minute doc? How did you, I'm sure you have way more footage. What was your process for editing down and telling the story?
So I think the pitfall when people first start making documentaries is you want to put in everything that you've shot, but really you just need to put in what's telling your story. And I always went, so there's two, you're a writer, so there's only two stories that have ever been told, right? So it's Stranger Comes to Town and Boy Goes Home. And really that's it. So I was like, okay, what is this story? It's Stranger Comes to Town, right? Cancer comes to town, and now it's his family's journey to beat cancer. I literally had on my whiteboard, I always channel Shrek because it's like such the perfect hero's journey, right?
I
Like,
love Shrek. Yeah.
so I'm always like, okay, what happens in act one? All we do in act one is we introduce our characters and we introduce our conflict. That's it. That's all we do. What's act two? All right, it's our journey to overcome this conflict. So it's this journey to overcome cancer. So what are these obstacles that they hit on the way? And really that was it. Like once I realized, because I've been teaching story structure to my students, and I was like stuck on my own story. And I literally got home from a class one day where I just been teaching them story structure, and I'm like editing and it's not working. And I'm like, oh, I still have to do this too. Just because I've been doing it for 20 years doesn't mean I don't have to do this for myself still.
Oh yeah. So one of the things I've learned is sometimes we get, I get this as a writer, I get too much in my own head, and like I can't see the forest for the trees. And I imagine, that you're just like, okay, I have blinders on. I forget that the world exists out here. So, now this is kind of a technical question. Did you start editing when you started, or did you wait till the end to start editing?
No, I was editing as I went along. So I would edit every time I shot. I'd be like, okay, here's a scene. And like one of the opening scenes where they're at the doctor's office, that scene I cut very differently when I first shot it because I didn't know what the story was yet. And then I remember going back like 6 months later and like looking through the footage, and I'm like, oh, this is a completely different scene now because now I know what the story is, and there's information in here that's more important than what I had had in before. So yes, I was editing as I was going along, but you also have to remember to keep going back and like go back and look at scenes because you don't remember it, right? Everything. So
Oh yeah. Okay,
yeah, but
very
otherwise,
cool.
I mean, I had like 22 shoot days, so it would have been too much to try to do it all at the end, I think.
Oh yeah, that's a lot. Because one of the things that watching it, to say when you say you only had 22 shoot days, that's like we think, okay, that's a lot. But when you were looking at the story, for how long did you shoot with them?
Yeah, for a year and a half. So it really wasn't that much.
Interesting, because it felt like you were with them on this journey the whole time. And I think that you captured that well, in that we're seeing this progression and stuff. Um, and I would have thought you had shot way more. The
Yeah, I
way that
thought
you
I had shot way more actually.
structured.
And I went back and looked and like, oh, it was really only 22 days, but it's like, that's almost a full month of filming.
Right. But then spread out, it's really not that much,
Yeah.
but
And it helped because I lived so close to them. It was like 20 minutes away. So
oh yeah.
when stuff was happening, I was like, oh, I can just like hop over and go shoot this.
Cool. So you were able to kind of be a part of that journey, even if you weren't filming it. Were you over there more than just filming too? I know you said you kind of were bonding with them. Did you how do I say, what's the word question I'm looking for?
No, most of the time I was over there, I had my camera because like you can't not bring your camera, right? Because then that's when
Right.
something happens and then you didn't catch it.
Right.
As soon as you turn off your camera, that's when someone says like that great thing.
And you're just like, oh.
You're like, all right, wait, can you say that again? Thanks.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, what now, how far removed are you from the end of editing and stuff? And now looking back, what how do you think this has changed your process of looking forward for future projects?
Yeah, well, it definitely taught me what like a long-term project looked like because I had never done something this long and I definitely wanted to quit throughout. Yeah, it was hard. So having those, it was my thesis film for grad school. So having my advisors pushing me and forcing me to finish was good. I mean, obviously. um, but yeah, it definitely taught me like what actually documentary filmmaking is like. Like we see a lot of films that are on Netflix now that are just, talking heads covered with B-roll. And like that's great, but that's not really documentary filmmaking. It's not really getting in there. That's like telling a story of something that already happened versus getting in there and filming as something as it unfolds. Which was a really fun experience. It was definitely, it was very difficult at times, but now I'm like, oh, now I have this new skill and wherever I go, I have this skill and I can find those stories now. And that's really what makes a film so special is when you take audiences into a place that they never would have gotten to experience before, right? Like, no, not everyone could have made this film. Not everyone would have gotten that access that I had. And there are other films that I can't make because of who I am, right? So it's finding those stories that you are lucky enough to be the person who can actually tell that story as opposed to anyone telling the story, I think.
Okay, cool. Yeah, when you're saying, the talking heads with B-roll, we don't get that with this story. We are in the story and we are on the journey with them. We're watching it happen. We are not seeing a past event. We're living it. And I think that was really good filmmaking, storytelling. So good job on that. So kind of tell me what's going on with your film now.
So we are moments away from it being on Amazon. I keep checking and they're like, it's in review. We'll let you know. So hopefully it'll be up in a few days. I was trying to do the film. So we got but the big milestone and achievement that I wanted to get is we got to the finalists for the Student Academy Awards this year. So that was huge. It was
Congratulations.
One of the 7 best student documentaries that were made this year in the US. So that feels pretty incredible. Unfortunately, the film festivals aren't really a thing anymore. So we did
right now, yeah.
Yeah. So we got into the Breckenridge Film Festival that was this past fall, but it was all online, which was fine, except I realized that, if all these film festivals are going to be online, and the whole point that you get your film into film festivals is to network and meet other filmmakers and meet distributors, and then if that's not happening, then why am I giving all these film festivals the rights to stream my film and make money off of it when I can just put it up on Amazon and do that myself? So I made that decision a couple weeks ago, and now it's going to be up on Amazon for a little bit. It'll be for purchase. I'll probably leave it up for purchase for, a few months and then switch it over to Prime. So that's that. So now I'm just, doing interviews like this, trying to get the word out, because before it was so hard to be like, yes, I have this film. And people was like, well, where can I watch it? I'm like, well, you can't, because while you're trying to get into film festivals, you can't put it online anywhere. So right. I'm like, you know what? Film festivals are not this year. This is not the year for film festivals, unfortunately. So
yeah. Speaking of film festivals, I have had 10 years of volunteering with Sundance, and I'm not volunteering this next year. It's very sad, but it's all online. They just don't need as many volunteers. It's very sad. Okay. Well, I am so grateful to you for taking this time to talk to me about your film and your process. When it gets online, you'll send me a link so yes. People can link to that. Any final thoughts about your journey as a filmmaker, as a human? What do you want people to think about when they watch this? Any final thoughts?
I think one of the biggest questions I've been getting has been, how did you separate yourself as a filmmaker from the family? And I think the number one thing to remember is that we are human beings first. I am a human being before I am a filmmaker. I am a daughter. I am a sister before I'm a filmmaker. And I didn't separate myself from the film. Like when Madison was not doing well, I did not want to make this film anymore. That was tough. I was like, I can't do this anymore. And then when she was doing great, I was like, oh no, this is great. We can keep making this film. And we should go into that sensitivity with subjects. You are allowed to become friends with your subjects. You are allowed to do that. And I think for a very long time, there's been like kind of this wall that has been put up. And I wanted to get rid of that, because as filmmakers, you should have care for your subjects. You should care about your subjects. Because if you don't, why are you making that film?
Absolutely.
And like the whole time I was making this, I was like, Madison is going to watch this one day. Melanie is going to watch this one day. So I need to make a film that not only am I proud of, but I'm proud to show them.
Oh, I think they are going to be very proud of this film. So real quick, has Melanie seen it yet?
Oh yeah, she's been watching it like on repeat since it's been done in May. And Madison had a chance to watch it also. So yeah.
Oh, cool. Well, congratulations. I am so happy for you and excited for you. I think this was an excellent film. Lots of tears. So take lots of tissue when you watch this. And so thanks for joining me today. And thank you, Sarah, for sharing all of your wonderful experiences that you had as a filmmaker. And we'll see you again here soon.